The internet is such a huge resource, and yet there's a lot of anti-Mormon information that's being moved about.
Right. This is a topic of some interest to me because as a convert, let me tell you a quick story. I grew up in Liverpool, England, and that's where I was first exposed to the church. And that was before the internet, and so my first instinct was to go to the library, the large library in Liverpool. And I looked up every single book that there was in the library that had any reference to the church. And my memory serves, there were 33 different books. One of them was a positive book called The Mormons by Robert Mullen, who's a non-LDS author, and there was one Book of Mormon. All of the others were anti-church books.
So 31 other books.
So 31, and I read them all. I read everything I could read about the church because I was like a sponge, soaking it all up. Now, obviously, I got through that, and I found most of the material patently absurd, frankly, and I didn't have any trouble in finding counter arguments to most of it. Here we are 45 years later, and it really hasn't changed much. There is very little that is new out there. There may be some issues that have dug a little bit deeper, but there's very little new that wasn't out there for 30, 40 years ago. And one thing I learned is that if you are properly anchored, if you're properly anchored in the gospel, if you have that spiritual conversion, that spiritual testimony, then you can see all of this other material in its perspective and in context. A couple of things I would suggest. One is that when members encounter this kind of material, they understand that there are arguments, there are other materials. I think you can go to Mormon.org and find doctrinal questions answered. There are other places, other websites like the FAIR website and others that's fair.org, that provide answers to some of those questions. But I think it's also important to understand that we will always have our detractors. I try to draw, in these kind of situations, as many parallels as I can with the New Testament. And if you look at the accusations that were leveled at Jesus Christ, read his trial, what people said about him. Read what the Pharisees and the Sadducees said about his preaching, what he was alleged to have said. And then go back and read what the critics say Joseph Smith taught and what he preached. And you can see the parallels. You can see that prophets and apostles through the ages have had rocks thrown at them. And that is never going to stop. It shouldn't cause anyone surprise. It will continue. I am absolutely certain it will continue till the second coming. So we're not going to see an end to that anytime soon. The important thing is to see it in perspective. It's what it is. It's people expressing their viewpoint. Those viewpoints differ from us. They're entitled to those views, but we can't allow ourselves to get distracted from it.